Okay, this is your formative quiz on section 3.1. The questions in 3.1 all relate to the idea of exponents or squaring and square roots. So the first question says, what is 6 squared? Now, the truth is that there is about 15 to 20% of you that are going to say that 6 squared is 12. And it happens every year. And it will always happen every year because some people will lose their mind when they have to think about what this means. So 6 squared really means 6 multiplied by itself twice. The 6 we call a base, and the 2 we call an exponent. And what we really mean is you take the base, 6, the base is 6, and you multiply it by itself this many times. So in the case of 6 squared, you multiply 6 by itself twice. 6 times 6 is 36, and therefore 6 squared is 36. If it happened to be 6 to the power of 3, you'll learn next year that's called 6 cubed, which would be 6 multiplied by itself 3 times, which would give you 216. Okay? So the idea of squaring and cubing are different concepts, but the idea is the same. How many times do you multiply the base by itself? In the case of exponents of 2, it's twice. The second question, what is 10 squared? There are still people who will put the number 20 down, no matter how many times I tell them what squaring means. But 10 squared really means 10 multiplied by itself twice, which means 10 squared is 100. Question 3, when I say what is the square root of 16, there will still be a plethora of people that say 8, because they simply take half of whatever number is under there. But that's not the case. The square root symbol really kind of means this: what number, when multiplied by itself, is. So if you think about it kind of like that, what number when multiplied by itself is 16? You can say, well, 4 multiplied by itself will give me 16. So therefore, the square root of 16 is 4. Okay? Some people put 4 squared, but that's not true. The square root of 16 is not 4 squared. 16 is 4 squared. 16 equals 4 squared, but the square root of 16 equals just 4. Question 4 is one of the ones we memorized. What's the square root of 400? Some people probably put 200, but the square root of 400 is really 20. And 400 is really equal to 20 squared. Okay? Question 5, we have a very simple bedmass question. 3 plus, oops, that's not what I want to do. 3 plus 6 squared, so we have order of operations. Because bedmass says B, E, D, M, A, S, the B is for brackets. The E actually stands for exponents. So in this case, we must do our exponents first. So 3 plus 6 squared, which is 36, and we have 39. Make sure you show this step on paper, because with bedmass you have to show your work. Question 6, we have negative 3 take away 4 squared. Exponents is done first. So we have negative 3 take away whatever 4 squared is, which is positive 16. And if you want to use subtraction, it's minus 3 in a room. You take away 16 degrees of warm air. It would become colder by 16 degrees, giving you negative 19. Or a simpler way to do it sometimes is just to think of it as being keep, flip, change. 3 negatives with 16 negatives gives you 19 negatives in total. And question 7 says, using prime factorization to determine if 425 is a perfect square. So we're going to break it down. I know 5 is a factor because it ends in 5. And 5 times 125 is that. Then 125 is really 5 times 25. That's a prime factor there, and these are not. So what I've really done is when I circle those numbers, those are the prime numbers, or the numbers I can use that are prime, that I can multiply together to create 625. So 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 are prime factors of 625, which means if I was to break them down into 2 equal groups, I would be able to rearrange them like that, which means 625 is a perfect square. And what it also tells me is 25 is the square root of 625. There we go. So yes, it's a perfect square. There are your vocabulary words. You press pause if you need to. And finally, the school gym teacher, Mr. Bridges, told his students to run twice around the gym. So the gym has an area of 225 meters squared. So the first thing we're going to have to do is determine what is the side length. Our formula for the area of a square is A equals S squared. Now in this particular case, we don't know the side length, but we do know the area. So we substitute it for 225. And now I have 225 equals S squared. So algebraically, we know that whatever you do to one side of an equation, if you do the same thing to the other, you create equality. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square root the left. I'm going to square root the right. The square root of 225 is 15. And what number, when multiplied by itself, gives you S squared? The answer is S. So therefore, I have the answer is 15. Now some people put 15 down as their answer. I said, I'm walking away from this. That's it. 15 is the answer. But then they read the question, and it says twice. So then some people said, oh, I get it, so it's 30, and then they walked away. But neither of those answers is correct because they ran twice around the gym. So if you think about this gym, one lap around the gym would be 60 meters because there are 4 15s. 2 laps around the gym, you would have to multiply it by 2, and therefore the answer to the question is, how far did each student run? They ran 120 meters.